What's up, y'all, and welcome back to the Station Bakery. To get started decorating this cake, I am torting my cake layers. Torting is the process of dividing your cake layers into multiple layers. So I will be dividing or torting each of my 3 layers into 2 layers each, giving me a total of 6 layers for this cake. Now that my layers are roughly torted, I am going to prep my piping bag for my icing. I'll be using a coupler because I am going to want to use this same color buttercream in 2 different ways, and a coupler allows me to do that without having to reuse a whole nother piping bag. So here I am using the Kawani F2 tip. I'll have it linked in the description below for you. So first you insert the first part of the coupler inside of the bag, then you place the piping tip on top of that, and then take the top and screw that on, and that is what holds your tip in place. You just take it out and switch it out as needed. So now I've placed my piping bag inside of a cup, and I'm going to now load it up with my velvety smooth buttercream. This buttercream is my absolute favorite, but what I love even more is being able to put my buttercream in without messing up my hands. That is a big pet peeve of mine. I just don't like the feeling of having buttercream on my hands. So putting the piping bag inside of the cup and then putting the buttercream inside really helps me in that process. Although you can clearly see that there is buttercream on the side of my hand, and I did not even notice. Now let's get our turntable out so we can start layering and stacking this cake. I like to put down a piece of non-slip mat under my cake board solely to hold the cake in place and keep it from slipping and sliding as I decorate. This is going to be a vanilla cake filled with strawberry filling. You can find my vanilla cake recipe linked here on the video, but also linked in the description below. It's actually my most requested flavor, so happy to share this recipe with you all, and hopefully you enjoy it. So here I have laid down a layer of buttercream on top of my cake, and now I'm going in with a border of buttercream. This is going to serve as a holding place or a fortress for my filling. Adding the border of buttercream is really imperative to not having the filling seep out of your cake layers. Nobody likes when your cake starts sinking and collapsing because your filling is oozing out of the sides. So putting this border down is what is going to hold in that filling, especially if you're working with a loose filling. But even more so, what helps is by using your offset spatula and going around the inside of that border and kind of meshing that into the buttercream layer that you've already laid down. So if you keep watching here, you'll see me do that on the inside. What this does is that it takes out any air or any openings where that filling could potentially seep through the buttercream. And I have found this to be an absolute game changer with making and stacking cakes with looser fillings. It literally seals it in so it won't fall out. So here I am going in with another layer of my strawberry filling. I will have this recipe linked in the description below for you as well. This filling is fresh, it's homemade, and just absolutely divine and delicious. I have had literally no complaints. Not only is this good for filling your cakes, but it's also really great on other treats and desserts like ice cream, filling them inside of cake balls, stuffing cookies with it. So there's really a lot that you can do with this filling. So this cake is going to be 6 layers high with 5 layers of filling in between it, which means that we are going to need some support in this cake so it doesn't collapse on itself. So here I'm going through just adding on a light crumb coat around the outside, just making sure that all of that buttercream is nice and smooth and that the fillings and everything are completely sealed inside of the cake. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these bubble straws to create a base to hold up that top half of the cake. So I'm simply just pushing the straws in, measuring it out to the height, cutting it, and then pushing it back down. I am adding in 4 straws, and this is going to serve as a sturdy base for that top part of the cake to sit on so that it doesn't crush my beautiful cake layers below it. Once I put the straws in, I will then pop it into the refrigerator, or you can put it in the freezer to let it chill for a few minutes. You don't want to start adding that next layer until your cake is completely chilled to the touch. Once your cake is chilled, you can add on another layer on top of those straws just to cover in those holes, and then start repeating that process all over again of layering in the fillings and your buttercream borders, cake, and just repeating that process until you get to the top layer. So enjoy this quick montage. I'm gonna jump back in once we're done. Now my layers are all stacked, and now I am ready to go in and add on a crumb coat. A crumb coat is what helps to seal in any loose crumbs that might fall off of the cake, but it also helps to reinforce the outside edges of your buttercream to make sure that your filling is held in place so it doesn't seep out. So we're just going to give this a nice light layer. I also like to take this opportunity to even out my cake as much as possible. So I will use my buttercream to fill in any holes and any spaces that might be missing buttercream, just to give me a smooth base to start off with. So once the cake is pretty smooth, I like to then check it to make sure that it is level, meaning that it's not leaning to one side or the other, and to make sure that the top is fairly even. To do that, I just take a step back and I eye it, and I look to see if I see any parts where it's leaning. I have a problem with my cakes at the top kind of being thicker than it is at the bottom, so I always have to go back in to double check that, just to make sure that I have straight edges inside. Then I pop it into the refrigerator to let it chill. While the cake is chilling, I go ahead and I start mixing my buttercream to make the colors that I want. For this cake, I'll be using Wedgwood Blue and Royal Blue by Americolor. Again, I will have everything that I used in this video linked in the description below. So I like to use just a very small amount of buttercream for my outside layer, because I like to conserve on my food colorings, but also just so the cake doesn't have that much food coloring loaded into the buttercream, and so you don't run the risk of having like a bitter tasting cake solely because of using too much food coloring. So I just like to use a very thin layer. You can add as many drops as you need to this, but always remember that as your buttercream sits, the color will deepen and darken. Now let's get our chilled cake out and start icing it. As you see, I'm going in with a very thin layer. So you know I'm not kidding when I say I only use a very small amount. I mean a very small amount. So I'm going in with a very thin layer. I find doing this up and down method helps to give me the thinnest layer possible. If you were to put icing in a piping bag and then pipe it on that way, then you'll end up with a lot more buttercream than you planned for. So I like to do this method because I can get it as thin as I want and making sure that it still has full color coverage. Once I've covered my cake with the layer of buttercream, I then go in with my metal scraper and scrape until smooth. I make sure to fill in any holes that are left behind by the scraping, and then scrape again until all the sides are nice, even, and smooth. Once they are even and smooth, I then pop my cake into the refrigerator to chill for a little bit longer. While the cake is in the refrigerator, I'm going to start preparing my drip. I'm using almond bark. I'm using 3 blocks, but really for this cake, you only need 1. Melt down the almond bark in the microwave, and then I add about 1/4 cup of water and stir until it is the consistency that I desire. And then we're going to set that to the side to let it firm up just a tad. While my drip is cooling, I'm going to go ahead and start prepping some of my other decorations, such as this edible lace. I am dusting it down with some gold luster dust. This, along with everything else used in this video, will be linked in the description below. Alright, now my cake is chilled and out of the refrigerator, and now it's time to get those sharp edges. This is typically how I get my edges nice and straight and clean. I'm using an offset spatula and literally just scraping off that rough top edge. You just go around and slowly scrape off the pieces until the top of your cake is nice, even, and level. And just like magic, now you have perfectly straight and sharp edges. While our cake is still a bit cold, we are going to start adding our drip. I'm just going to stir it up a little bit and take a spoonful and pour it on top of the cake. Then I'm going to use the back of the spoon to gently guide the chocolate over the edges, creating this kind of messy drip look. If you would like to go for a cleaner drip, then you will want to use a piping bag in order to perfectly place your drips. Once I'm happy with the way that my drip looks, I then pop it back in the refrigerator to let it set up. While it's setting up, I am now going to go in and create the buttercream that is going to go on the top of my cake for the border. I am using the Americolor Royal Blue, and I'm just mixing it into my buttercream, and then I'm going to put it inside of a piping bag. Here's that same piping bag with that coupler. So now I'm going to be able to put on my Kawani F2 tip in order to get the look and the effect that I'm going for on the top of this cake. However, feel free to use whatever tip you prefer. Alright, now let's start putting on our edible lace. This 6-inch cake takes 2 pieces of edible lace, and then I am going to have to cut some down. What's great about this edible lace is that it's very flexible, very pliable, and I can just lay it and place it where I need to. Here I am cutting around the drip because I don't want the edible lace to cover or lay on top of the drip. And now I am adding on that second piece, just lining up the edges is very easy to do. And then I'm cutting off the excess so that it all looks seamless in like one full piece. Now I'm going to go in and start adding all of the final touches, starting with this simple rope border using that blue buttercream that we colored earlier. I'm just simply swirling the buttercream around to make this beautiful effect. Now I am topping it off with some gold dusted Biscoff cookies. I simply just took a paintbrush and dusted on the gold dust on it just to give it that shimmer. Now I'm going in with some edible glitter and giving it a little sparkle. And this is some edible paint, and I'm just going to splatter it all around to give it a fun look. And now we're going in with some gold leaf. I love gold leaf. Add it to any and everything. Top it off with a few sprinkles. Clean off your board, and then we are ready for the final accessory to go on top of this cake. A golden balloon. So blow up your balloon, and I am using a skewer that I whittled down. Attach it to the balloon, place it on top of your cake, and then you are good to go. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one. Until next time, guys, peace.